After 3 years away, my husband walked through that door with his mistress and her son.
He walked in like he still lived there, because as far as he was concerned, he did. This is Teresa, and this is Edward, my son. He asked me to understand. I didn't scream. I just stared. Under our bed sat a chest he had never once opened in 5 years of marriage. I knew exactly what was waiting inside it. I walked back down that hallway, holding proof he never saw coming and a reckoning he could not begin to imagine. I set the folder on the table between us and stepped back. "Sign it," I said, "and get out of my house." He flipped it open. His own name was already printed under mine, beside a line waiting for his signature. His eyes moved down the page once, then again, slower, like the words might change on a second read. For 3 seconds, he didn't say anything at all. Then he laughed, short and ugly, and closed the folder with one hand. "You don't have a job. You don't have $1 in your name." He looked me up and down like I was something he'd found in a closet. "Who exactly do you think you're divorcing me from?" Teresa laughed too, quieter, like she'd been waiting for permission. I didn't raise my voice. I picked up the water glass Teresa had knocked with her elbow and set it upright again. 3 years alone teaches you that trick. I fixed a burst pipe myself at 2 in the morning one January with a wrench I'd never touched before that night. I drove myself to the emergency room after I went down on a patch of ice outside this building. Nobody came either time. I stopped waiting for anyone to. "You'll find out exactly who," I said. "The day the paperwork does the talking for me." I went back to that chest and came out with one more piece of paper. I laid the deed to the apartment right on top of the divorce papers, squared it up with the edge of the table, like it belonged there. "This has been in my name since May 3rd, 5 years ago, the day before our wedding." He'd told his own mother this apartment was his. He'd told his own friends the same thing at every dinner party for 5 years. He read the deed twice. The hand holding it had started to shake. He tried anyway. "Marital property doesn't care whose name is on a piece of paper." "It does," I said, "when the paper is older than the marriage." He set it down like it had burned him and didn't pick it back up. Teresa dropped to her knees on my carpet and started crying. "Please," she said, "just a small corner of this apartment. He's innocent. My son is innocent." Grant crouched beside her. "Look what you're doing to her. Have some mercy." "She's not the one on the floor," I said. "You put her there." "You'd really throw a baby out into the street?" Grant said. "To win an argument." "Nobody is throwing anybody anywhere," I said. "I'm asking 2 adults to leave an apartment that was never yours to give away." I looked down at my own sleeves, the same gray cardigan I'd been wearing for 2 winters, the cuffs starting to fray. Then I looked at his watch, then at the closet behind him, at the dozen suits he'd never once let me touch, the boxes of shoes still stacked with their tissue paper. "You sent me just enough to keep the lights on," I said. "And you bought yourself all of that?" "Get up off my floor, Teresa. It doesn't suit you." Teresa's face went red. For 1 second, under all that performance, something real finally showed through. Then she wiped her face, stood up straight, and reached for Grant's arm, like it already belonged to her. His phone rang before Teresa's tears had even dried. He picked up. "Mom, she's not being reasonable." He listened for a second, jaw tight. then held the phone out toward me. "Talk to her yourself, then." I almost didn't take it. Then I decided I wanted to hear this for myself. A woman's voice on the line, tight and clipped. "A good wife understands a man needs comfort while he's away. That boy is my grandson, whether you like it or not." "He's 3 years old, and he isn't yours to claim," I said. "You don't get to pick which grandchildren count." "Mrs. Ashford, don't worry. Your son and your grandson, I need neither of them." I hung up before she could get another word in. Then I called Carolyn Stafford. 2 sentences. That was all it took to start the clock running. Grant followed me into the bedroom and stood in the doorway, watching me pack. "You're really doing this? Over an apartment?" "I'm doing this because you brought your girlfriend and her kid into my house and called it generosity," I said. I packed 1 small suitcase, my own clothes, nothing he'd ever bought me. The jewelry box stayed open on the dresser, every piece inside it still his, as far as I was concerned. He could sell it, gift it, do whatever he wanted with it. I changed into jeans and a plain white t-shirt in a bathroom he used to call beneath us both. He watched the whole thing like he still expected me to stop halfway through and put it all back. "You think a piece of paper protects you?" he said. "I'll take this to court. I'll take everything." Teresa called from the couch. "Once he wins, you'll wish you'd been nicer to me." I didn't answer her. At the door, Grant tried one more angle. "When your tantrum's over, come back. I'll still give you a chance." I smiled at him, the first real smile all night, and walked out without a word. I didn't look back at the building. I'd already said goodbye to it in my head weeks ago. A black Bentley was waiting at the curb. My driver took the suitcase without a word and opened the back door. I sat in the back seat with my hands folded in my lap and let myself breathe for the first time all night. We drove for almost an hour, out past the city, past the highway, until the street lights gave way to stone walls and dark hedges. The car turned through a pair of iron gates in Greenwich, Connecticut. A different world, 50 minutes from the one I'd just left. The housekeeper was already waiting on the front steps, porch light glowing behind her. "Welcome home, Miss Diane." Behind her stood a house nobody at that dinner table had ever heard of. Mine. Every stone of it. Mine. I let her take the suitcase this time. 6 years of carrying everything myself, and for one night, I let somebody else carry something. Grant thought he'd just humiliated a housewife. He had no idea what he'd actually started. A few days later, a court summons arrived at the apartment. Grant read it once and laughed out loud. "She'll come crawling back before this ever sees a courtroom," he told Teresa, and hired a lawyer named Mr. Delgado just to make it official. Delgado's advice, apparently, was simple. Offer her a little money, remind her who paid for everything, and watch her fold. 3 weeks later, we sat across a glass table on the 35th floor. Delgado slid a single sheet toward me. A generous offer, given the circumstances. 6 months of alimony. I didn't even reach for the paper. "That's insulting," Caroline said, before I could answer. She opened a folder of her own and spread 5 photographs across the table. "Taken in San Francisco," Caroline said. "Your client and Teresa, 4 months before he came home to his wife." Grant's face went white. He didn't touch a single photo. Delgado cleared his throat and reached for the alimony sheet, like he could still make it disappear. "We're filing for adultery," Caroline said. and equitable distribution of every dollar Mr. Ashford earned during the marriage. Then she slid a second folder across the table, thicker than the first. For the record, my client won't be needing his money.
Grant opened it himself. Bank statements, a deed for a duplex in Soho, a commercial space on Madison Avenue, a house in the Hamptons. All in my name.
The last page said I owned 70% of a company called Aurelian Silk. His hand was shaking before he finished the page. Aurelian Silk, he said, like the words didn't fit in his mouth. You don't even have a job. I have a company, I said. You just never once asked what I did with my days. Delgado quietly slid the alimony sheet back into his own folder. Nobody mentioned it again. Caroline stood, gathered both folders, and looked at Grant like she was already finished with him. We'll be in touch about a hearing date. Back at the estate, I was working a phoenix in black silk thread when my assistant, Elizabeth, knocked on the studio door. The Calloway group called again, she said. Richard Calloway wants Aurelian silk for the centerpiece of the Meridian Pavilion. He's asking for a meeting, not a phone call. I hadn't taken a public meeting in 3 years. I'd built the whole company from behind a fake name and a locked gate. I set my needle down. Tell him yes. After 3 years of hiding, I was about to walk back into a room full of people who thought they knew exactly who I was. Teresa moved into the apartment within a week. She replaced my pale blue sheets with red ones and posted a photo captioned, "Happiness sometimes takes a while to arrive." Then a second post. Then a third. My old kitchen rearranged behind her in every one, like she was redecorating a stage. I never once responded. My own page stayed exactly as it had been for 6 months. 1 white magnolia, no new posts. Her provocations landed on nothing. That silence frustrated her more than anything I could have said. Grant told Caroline's investigators most of this later, trying to buy himself sympathy he never got. I'm telling it the way he told it. An old classmate stopped by for a drink and couldn't stop talking about Diane Spencer, star of the Parsons fashion program, a National Design Award, a thesis once hung in the Met. She turned down offer after offer from fashion houses to follow you to San Francisco, he said. I always wondered what she saw in you. Grant didn't answer. He refilled his glass and stared at the door she'd walked out of 3 weeks earlier. You knew all that, the classmate said, watching his face. Didn't you? For 1 second, he almost felt something like guilt. Then he thought about her bank statements, and the guilt turned into something uglier. Backstage at the plaza, Elizabeth adjusted my sleeve for the 3rd time. You don't have to do this tonight. Yes, I do, I said. 3 years behind a locked gate is long enough. I looked at myself in that mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because she'd changed, but because nobody had looked at her directly in 3 years. A month later, at the Plaza Hotel, Aurelian Silk unveiled the Phoenix Rising collection with the Calloway Group. 200 guests, every seat filled. I walked out in a silver-white gown of my own design. The first time my own face had been in a room this size in 3 years. Richard Calloway stood beside me on that stage, and for the first time since I'd left that apartment, I wasn't hiding from anyone. The applause went on long enough that I stopped counting it. Grant was watching from the apartment, alone that night. Teresa out with friends, spending money that wasn't hers to spend either. The glass in his hand hit the floor before the anchor even finished saying my name. The simple housewife he'd scorned in his own living room was the woman every camera in that ballroom was pointed at. He sat there a long time, in the broken glass, not moving to clean any of it up. Teresa told me the rest of it herself, much later. She'd seen the same broadcast on a bar TV and gone quiet mid-sentence. She didn't say anything to the friends around her. She just paid her tab and left. Grant showed up at my gate the next morning, unshaven, wearing yesterday's shirt. The housekeeper let him as far as the front hall, and no further. He stood there in that entryway, looking smaller than I remembered him, in a house he hadn't known existed a month earlier. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it. Let me make this right. Let's manage the company together." "The company was registered before we married," I said. "Every dollar of it runs through a trust you have no access to, and I will not be withdrawing the petition." His face changed the second sorry stopped working. "You'd really let a marriage die over some fabric business?" "It's not a fabric business," I said. "It's 70 people's salaries, a town I just saved, and the only thing in my life you never once asked about." "I'm asking now," he said. "3 years too late," I said, and nodded toward the door. The housekeeper was already standing there, waiting. He didn't move for a second. Then he did. 2 days later, Mrs. Ashford arrived uninvited, driven up by a car she couldn't really afford anymore either. "Come back to the family," she said. "I'll have that woman and her bastard out of the apartment by tonight." The same child she had called her grandson on the phone, she now called a bastard when it suited her. "You didn't mean a word of that the first time either," I said. "You just picked whichever lie was useful." "You're punishing all of us," she said, "for one man's mistake." "My relationship with Grant Ashford is over," I told her. "Please, don't come here again." She opened her mouth to say something else. I didn't wait to hear it. The housekeeper walked her out, too. Back at the apartment, Grant locked himself in his study for hours, looking for some way into money that wasn't his. Teresa wanted to talk about wedding venues. He exploded instead. "You and that kid cost me everything I had." "Nothing but a gold digger!" she screamed back. "That's all you've ever been!" "At least I earned what I lost," he said. "What exactly did you bring into this?" She threw a glass at the wall behind him. It missed. Neither of them apologized. Neither of them slept in the same bed that night, or the 4 nights after it. The two of them had built their whole future on a lie neither one had told the other yet. I announced the Phoenix Rising restoration that same month, every dollar of Aurelian Silk's annual profit going into a dying textile town called Kingston, upstate. A reporter asked what I hoped it would prove. "Nothing," I said. "I just want the looms running again." Nobody told me the land right next to it was already being bought up for a resort. It belonged to Teresa's father. The whole plot got declared a protected heritage site within the month. His company had sunk 2 years of planning into that land. It was gone in a single afternoon, and I hadn't even known his name until Caroline's team found it in the paperwork. 2 weeks later, an architecture forum posted photos of substandard steel inside Grant's crowning project in San Francisco, the same city I'd given up my own career to follow him to, the same city he'd built his name in while I weeded. Cut corners, missing concrete, money that never made it into the building. His name was in every headline by morning. He was certain I'd done it to him. I hadn't touched it. I didn't need to. He'd built that tower the same way he'd built our marriage, on paper that looked fine until somebody actually checked it. Half a dozen contractors came forward that same week, each with a different story about money that never reached the site. I was at Mount Sinai to see my old embroidery teacher, Mr. Whitcomb, after a stroke, when I passed the pediatrics wing and saw Teresa there. She was holding Edward, both of them exhausted, the boy running a fever. Nobody else with her. I felt for him. He hadn't chosen any of this. I didn't walk over. I just turned and kept going. I sat with Mr. Whitcomb for 20 minutes after that and barely heard a word he said. Richard found me a few minutes later, waiting for the elevator. "You look like you just saw a ghost." "Something like that," I said. "Art needs inspiration," he said. "Don't let bad memories cloud it." I believed him more than I meant to. We didn't talk about what I'd seen down that hallway. He didn't ask, and I didn't offer. He waited with me until the elevator came, and didn't fill the silence with anything unnecessary. Caroline's forensic team found the rest on their own. Grant and Teresa's father had been moving stolen project funds through shell companies into an offshore account in Grant's name. "There's enough here for criminal charges, not just the divorce filing," she said. "Do you want me to hand it to the district attorney or sit on it?" "Do what the law requires," I told her. "Whoever made the mistake can answer for it." I wasn't hunting him anymore. He'd already caught himself. The warning letter came from Caroline's firm. Copies of every offshore transfer attached. Grant threw it on the coffee table in front of Teresa. "Explain this." She broke down completely. "My father set it up. He used your name because you were lead architect. I thought that money was going to be ours anyway." "Ours," Grant repeated. "You mean mine. All of it was always going to be mine." "You didn't even ask where the extra contracts were coming from," she said. "You just cashed the bonus checks and stopped asking questions." "I trusted you," he said. "I gave up an actual marriage for you." "You gave up a marriage for yourself," she said. "Don't put that on me." The fight kept going long after that. Teresa screamed the one thing she should have kept to herself. "If it weren't for this child, do you think you'd have any value to us at all?" Grant went very quiet. He didn't answer her. He was already thinking about something else entirely. He looked at Edward, asleep in the next room, for a long time before he said anything else that night. "Get some sleep," he finally said. "We'll talk in the morning." They both knew that wasn't true. That night, while Teresa slept, Grant collected a few strands of hair from his own comb and a few more from Edward's crib and mailed both to a lab the next morning. 3 days felt like 3 months. He went to work like nothing was happening and came home and checked his phone every 10 minutes. The results came back on a Thursday. 15 genetic loci didn't match. Edward was not his son. He read the letter twice, standing in the same kitchen, the same way he'd read the deed to my apartment 3 months earlier. Grant put both of them out that same night. He didn't say goodbye to the boy. Within a month, he'd lost his job, his accounts were frozen, and the leasing company sent someone to repossess his car from a motel parking lot. Every partner who'd once returned his calls stopped answering. His own mother stopped answering too. He moved into a motel off the highway with 2 suitcases and started selling the watches one at a time. He came to my gate at 11 at night and got down on his knees in the gravel. "For the years we were married," he said, "help me, save me." "Your downfall is not my doing," I said. "I never wanted revenge on you. Everything you're suffering is the consequence of your own greed and your own choices." He didn't say anything back. There wasn't anything left to say. I didn't call anyone to help him. I didn't call anyone to hurt him either. I just walked back inside. The iron gate closed behind me on its own. The divorce was finalized on a quiet Tuesday morning. I signed my name and walked out without giving him a single glance. Everything Caroline's team had found went straight to the district attorney's office that same week. Grant didn't contest a single line of the settlement. There was nothing left to fight for, and by then, no money left to fight with. Outside the courthouse, reporters who'd been chasing the San Francisco story tried to get a comment out of him. He didn't say anything to them either. Grant was convicted of embezzlement, money laundering, and construction fraud. He went to prison that spring. Teresa's father was charged right alongside him. His company went bankrupt within the year. The same year, his resort land became a heritage site he could no longer touch. The man who had actually fathered Edward, her real lover, a deputy at her father's firm, left the country before anyone could serve him papers. Teresa was left with probation and debt. Edward went to live with her mother upstate, the one relative who'd wanted nothing to do with any of this from the start. Mrs. Ashford had a stroke the day she heard her son was going to prison. None of it was mine to feel guilty about. I hadn't lied to a single one of them. They'd done that themselves, one choice at a time. Months later, the Meridian Pavilion exhibition sold out in a single weekend. Kingston reopened as a working textile town again, exactly the way I'd promised. I ran into Richard again in Charleston on a research trip for the next collection. We walked the old streets for an hour, talking about nothing important. "Elegance comes from the strength after the storm," he said, "from the peace after you let go of resentment." I didn't say anything back right away. I just kept walking beside him. And for once, that felt like enough of an answer. He asked if he could call me again once we were both back in New York. I said he could. Back in my studio, I stretched a fresh piece of white silk across the frame and picked out a spool of turquoise thread. The chest under my bed once held my whole future in secret. This time, I was stitching mine out in the open, one thread at a time, for anyone who cared to look.